In this tutorial, we'll focus on tables. I can't really emphasize how important tables are in the overall design, layout and management of a website. They're absolutely essential. And most people, when they think about tables, they think about presentation of data, presentation of information, but it's way more than that, especially when you're dealing with websites. It's really got to do with the whole layout, you need to be able to create holding spaces, etc. for tables. It's very, very important. Here we have a layout of a table. For anyone who has already done this exercise, that's great. If you haven't already done this exercise, I'm just going to go through a little introduction, and then I want you to pause it and have a go at doing this exercise yourself using Microsoft Expression. So really what we're going to start off by trying to do is create a table that looks exactly like this, where you have resume up on top, you have name, email and nationality here, your actual name, your actual email and your actual nationality here, and then a section on the right hand side with the word picture in it. So what's really important about this is that these three items are exactly in line with one another. As you can see here, there is no border down along here like there is here. Okay, I don't want to show a border here, and the reason I'm doing this is to try and get used to using tables and to try to use them to try to present information in different ways within our web page. So I want this line to be exactly halfway in the cell, but I don't want anything presented in there. I don't want any border in there to hold that line. So have a go and have a think about how you're going to do this. If you haven't already done this exercise, please pause the video right now and have a go at it using Microsoft Expression. Right after this, I'm going to continue on and actually do it, but please have a go at it first, because it's worth thinking this out, because you will be using this an awful lot throughout your web development project. Okay, I'm going to open up Expression, and I'm going to just use the page that we've been dealing with all throughout this these tutorials so far. I'm going to go to the very bottom, and I'm going to just press return a few times here, and I'm going to create a bit of space. So what I'm going to do is create a table in here. And there's many different ways of creating a table. You can go up here and go insert table, or you can use the whole tabular layout here, insert table here. Some people will go about drawing a table. It depends on what you're used to. A lot of people are used to putting in tables in Word, and it's not very different here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this here, and I'm going to put in a table 2x4 here, and you can see it, and then just go, and it appears in there 2x4. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the background color of my page for the moment, so that the table will become a little bit more visible. It's difficult to see it maybe in this current background color and current view. So what I'm going to do is just change the background color of the page to something which is will allow my table to stand out a little bit there. Okay, and you can see it a little bit better there. Now I'm not going to stick with this green background after this, but just so we can see what's going on here. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to highlight the top two cells like that. Just highlight them like that. I'm going to right click them. I'm going to go modify, and I'm going to merge cells. Okay, so I'm going to put those two into the one, and what I'm going to type into the top is resume. Now obviously my text is blue, which is awful, but it'll do for the moment. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these three cells over here to the right hand side. These are the three cells that I'm going to make into one cell, so that I can put the word picture in there, and eventually when I do get onto images and the image examples later on in the course, I can put an image in here. So I'm just going to highlight those, right click them again, modify and merge cells. So now they're all the one. I'm going to write in the word picture in here just as a placeholder for I'm going to put a picture in here at some stage. Okay. Don't worry about the fact that my my cells have moved around with regards to the width and so on. I'm going to fix those later on. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do, and a lot of people will try this, and if you've done this example, which I hope you have, there will be a little bit of playing around with how you're going to try to, get your name over here and your actual name over in the middle. Okay, some people will try to space it out. Now, anybody that's used to Word will know that that more than likely isn't going to work. So then some people will start using the tab, and again, that really isn't going to work here, because when you click tab here, it jumps to the next cell rather than moves the content to the cell. So what I'm going to put down here is email next, and I'm going to put in my actual email address, patrick.horn@tudublin.ie. Press return. And finally, I'm going to put in my nationality. And my nationality is Irish. So at this point in time, I have my table done, you might say. But the one thing I asked you to try to do was to try to fix Patrick, my email address, and Irish all along this line here. Some people will try to put in different cells and hide them. Some people will try and do different things. What I'm actually going to do here, if I just preview my website, just go click preview here. I'm going to just put this in here. This is my preview my website in the browser. Just the way it looks at the moment if I go down to it, okay? And you'll notice none of my cells are actually none of my borders are actually shown. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to jump back into Expression and try to split this. To do this, I'm going to actually introduce another table, okay? In fact, I'm going to introduce 3, 1 for each of the cells. So just have a quick look at what I'm going to do. I'm just here below name. I'm going to put in a cell like this, okay, which is a 2 by 1. And in here, I'm going to put in name. And in there, I'm actually going to put in my actual name. And I'm going to delete the space above it. I'm going to go on to the second one. I'm going to insert another table in here, which is going to be, again, a 2 by 1. I'm going to put email over here, and I'm going to put my actual email address over here. And then finally, I'm going to do the same thing again. In here, I'm going to insert another table. So in total, there's going to be 4 tables in here. I'm going to put nationality in here. I'm going to put the word Irish in here. Hopefully all of the word Irish. I'm going to delete the spaces then. I don't want spaces in front of this, and I don't want spaces in front of this, okay? Now, at this point in time, I have the foundation for what I need here. If I preview this again, I can scroll down here and I can see, right, I still can't see any of my borders, which we'll play around with in a few minutes, and we'll have a look at the properties. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to just, for the moment, drag that over here like that. I'm going to drag this over here like this. Okay, so now they're all in line with one another. And you can see they're kind of in line, not 100%. We'll worry about that in a second, okay? So that's really what we're doing, okay? Before we go any further, I want to just start looking at properties of tables and so on. So that will make sure that this line is exactly where I need it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to resume. I'm going to right click beside resume, and I'm going to go table properties. The reason I went to resume is because I want to change the properties of the entire table, which is the original one I created, the main table here. So table properties. Now you can see I've got 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 columns, which is 1 and 2. Okay. If I need to add more, change these, I can do that. Alignment left, center, or right. At this point in time, my table is 100% of the width of the screen, and you can see it here. So my alignment of my table will have no effect on it because it's actually the full width of the screen at this moment in time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it down to 80% of the width of the screen. Okay, so I'm going to apply that, and you can see that my table gets smaller. And now if I go left and apply, right and apply, and center and apply, my table will move into the right, center, and left positions. Okay, so my table is 80% of the width of the screen. Now this is very important. I'm just going to take this table right now. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to put a space in between it, okay? Now, I just wanted to get a space in between it there, okay? So I've got two tables exactly the same at this point in time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, with the second table, I'm going to go table properties, and instead of 80%, I'm going to go in pixels. I'm trying to get the two in the same width just to see what's going on here. Slightly short, 7. Okay, about the same width there. Okay, now what I've done there, I don't know if anybody noticed, what I've actually done is I've come along here and I'm just taking out these spaces here. I don't want them in here. I've set the table width of the first one, if I go table properties, to being 80% of the width of the screen. So this top one is 80% of the width of the screen. The one below that is 720 pixels in width. Okay, so in this case, both of them look exactly or very similar to one another. What I just want to show you here, all right, is the difference between the two of them. When I actually grab this, you can see what's happening here. The bottom table stays exactly the same size. The top table, when I make my window bigger or smaller, gets bigger and smaller dependent on the window. So when I put borders around these in a minute, it'll become far more obvious. But the bottom one is always the same size, 720 pixels. The other one is 80% of the width of the screen. So if I'm dealing with a phone screen, it's 80% of the width of that screen. If I'm dealing with a large screen on a desktop, it's 80% of the width of that screen. If I'm dealing with a tablet, it's 80% of the width of that screen. So if I want complete control over the size of my table, I put it in pixels, like the bottom one here. And if I want it to be relative to the width of the screen, I put it on as a percent, like the top one here. Okay, so that's worth looking at, and it's really important as to what I want my table to do and how I want it to work. So I'm just going to get rid of the bottom one here. I'm going to work with, just play around with the top one. Okay, so table properties, 80% of the width of the screen. Now I'm going to have a look at a few of these things here. First of all, yes, I would change the width of my table. I wouldn't change the height of my table unless you knew exactly what height your table wanted to be. But normally I'd leave it be as regards to the content will dictate the height. Floating table. Now, my advice on this one is stay away from that all the time. Okay. Cell padding. Have a look at this. I'm going to change my cell padding from 1 up to 10, and you'll see, hopefully see what will happen when I just do this and go apply. What it does is it puts spacing in between the inside border of my cell and the content of my cell. So it puts more spacing in there. You can see it around here as well. Okay. So that's cell padding, spacing between the inside border and the content of the cell. And then the other one down here, I'm going to bring this back down to 1. And cell spacing is slightly different, but again creates space. But this time it creates it between the inside border and the outside border of your cell, not between the inside border and the content. So you can use these in conjunction with one another, but that's what the two of them do. I'm just going to bring this one back down to 1 as well. Now, the reason, if at this point in time, if I go OK and preview it in the browser, you can see that there's no borders on my table. That's because at this point in time, I have set my border width to being 0. So in order to make a visible border on it, I will at least need to put that to size 1, but I can make it way thicker if I want it to be. So if I bring it up to size 2 and then choose my border color, I'm going to choose this very ugly aqua color here. But anyway, I'll just go apply. What you see is this when I preview it. Now remember this, it puts a border on the outside of my table. So now I have a border on the outside of my table. I can do the exact same for all the cells. So I have a border around all of my cells as well. So if I highlight this here and go cell properties, it's the same idea. I can put a border in there. Okay. So table properties, and you can see here whatever color you want it to be, aqua, and that's apply. Okay. All right. Now that's for the entire table, not for each cell, but I will do it for cells now in a minute. Okay, when I get round to cells. Okay, so going back to my table properties, background color. So if I want to have my table with a different background color than outside of my table, this is how I do it. My background color, I can just change it here. I'm going to change my background color. Now again, I'm choosing something which is fairly obvious when I choose it and go apply. Okay, this kind of a pinky color will go to the background of my table. Okay, now this is very, very common if you want to have a sidebar, or if you want to have a menu, or if you want to have you know, a header or a footer a different color. This is a very, very common technique to do. And remember this, what we can do is we can change the color of one particular cell to being a different color. So if you want, you know, a background color of your website, but you want underneath the menu to be a different color, or underneath the heading and the footer is a very, very common one where it will be a different color. You can do that as well. So I won't use a background picture because, as I said, I'm going to deal with pictures later on in the module, and I'll deal with them all together. And then the last option here is set as default for new table. So if I click on that, that means every table that I create from now on will have this color scheme, will have this padding, will have this lovely pink background, will have this aqua border, and will be 80% of the width of the screen. So if I do that, that means every table I create from now on will have that until I change that. So I'm not going to set that as my default, but you can see what's going on there with that. Okay, so if I go apply and go OK, and then preview it in the browser, you can see my table looks like this. Okay, so it's coming together. Now this still isn't exactly the way I want it to be, and I don't have borders in here yet, but I will in a few minutes. Okay, so that's the first one, when I right click and go table properties. The next one, and this is very important, is when I right click and go cell properties. Now the cell, what it's doing here is it's changing the actual properties of a particular cell. So in this case, name, and I have my cursor blinking behind that. If I right click that and go cell properties, I'm just changing the properties of this particular cell. Okay, so in my case here, what I would like to do here is this line, I want it to be halfway across this particular section here. So I'm going to say, instead of in pixels, I'm going to say in percent, I'm going to say 50%. Let's just go apply. I'm going to do the same with the next cell down here. Right click this cell here, cell properties, in percent 50%. Now I'll come back to the other things in a minute, but just want to do this so that it'll all be exactly the same. Cell properties and 50%. Apply. Okay, now that's exactly halfway. So when I preview this, my table is getting closer to what I want it to be, with this exactly halfway. Okay. Now, if I just right click this cell here, the one with picture on it, I'm just going to do a couple of things here, play around with this particular one here, and go cell properties, horizontal alignment, vertical alignment. That just simply means where will my text or my image appear. So if I go left and go apply, my text goes to the left hand side. If I go vertical alignment, I go top and apply, it disappears right up here to the top. So it depends on where I want my content to be within the particular cell. So in my case here, I might want it center and middle, and apply that, and it will appear there. Okay. My particular cell is spanning 3 rows, which is 1, 2, 3, and 1 column, which is up here. Header cell. Now I've only one header cell in this particular table, and that's the one with resume on it. And I should set that to my header cell. That means when I sort my table, it doesn't sort resume into all the rest of the data. It keeps it separate. The next item here is no wrap, which means obviously if I start typing in here and no wrap, it means that it will just keep going and disappear out over the side of the over the side of the border here and disappear over here. If I go wrap, it means that when I get to the right hand side, like in a Word document, it will push on to the next line and then on to the next line. And it also means that once I get to here, if I'm still typing, it will make this cell actually taller. Okay. Border size, I'm going to say set it to 2, and I'm going to say aqua and apply that. Okay, and that puts a border around here. And the same with this here. If I come along here and I go background color and just say I wanted to change the whole background color of this particular cell to that, I could do that as well. So I'm not going to put a picture in here, but I'm going to just jump into a few of these cells and go cell properties. Most important here I'm going to do here is size 2 and aqua. And these ones down along here. Cell properties, size 2, color aqua. Okay, and you can see that now I need to take the space out of this one here, but my cell is starting to take shape there, okay? And these are the properties of my tables. And very simply, I'm just going to look here for name. Okay, resume, name, width. Okay, so my table, regardless of the ugly color, is really starting to take shape here. So this is what I was trying to do. So when you look at this, these lines aren't visible, and all the rest of them are visible. So it's exactly what I'm trying to get across, what I'm trying to do here. And you know, I'm happy enough that the way it's working out for me. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back into this particular table here, into my PowerPoint, and I've achieved what I set out to do. Now, this is the point I was making earlier on about the width in pixels versus the width in percent. The simple rule of thumb here is, if you want your data to be presented the exact same way, regardless of what device it's being looked at on, and your information to be laid out in a very, very specific way, and you want complete control over it, well then put in pixels. If you're displaying a table to hold information for a website and you want it to be 80% of the width of the screen or 90% of the width of the screen, well then go with percent. Just a quick one here. Tables are not just for data. Now, that's the most important takeaway from this particular tutorial, that we can hold lots of information in a table, and you'll see in a second what I mean by this. Here's a simple picture repeated 3 times, with, in the second case and the third case, with a table around it. And you can see the effect that it has. It makes the actual image look more finished and more, well, professional. Okay. Here's an example here of 2 very common websites, where this one here is very common with the whole idea of you see a different background color. What this here is, it's a table right in the middle of the page with a background color of the page to be a certain color, but a background color of the table to be a different color. And it looks like you're looking at a print preview scenario. Same with this one over here. So what I'm just going to have a quick look at here is, I'm going to zoom in and have a look at the actual HTML behind this. And as soon as it goes body, it changes the color here. The first thing that's said inside the body in the main part of my web page is center, and then after that it says table. And inside that there's another table. So what I'm trying to say is, quite often tables are used to hold information and to lay out your page. And the more time and effort you spend looking at tables, the better it will be for you in the long run. Here's another example down here, and I could pick thousands millions of examples that have followed the same type of scenario. So you can see body here, and the first thing that happens inside the body is a table. Then there's another table, and believe me, there's another table and another one as well. So it's all about tables holding your information. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for us to change the background color of this section or this section, and to, to split up the page and to kind of divide the look and the feel of the whole entire website. So tables are your friend. Tables are hugely important.